Hello, welcome to my stamping workshop. It's the first workshop that I've ever done, and so I'm hoping that you'll be gentle and just understanding. But let's get started. This is my spread that I posted in the group last week. It's actually the monthly spread, and it's a little bit of mixed media, so it's a little bit of stamping, a little bit of stickers, a little bit of stamping over here, stamping and some stickers on top, and then I just hand wrote things going on. So usually the first thing that I do when I get ready to do a new spread, especially if I'm stamping, is I go ahead and get the stamps all ready. But I have all the stamps together today, and I will get them, I will actually pull them out and use them as I select them. That way you can kind of see my process. First of all, what I do is, especially in this planner, I don't know if you're planning in a TN or planning in something else, but the best thing you can do is take out all of your little embellishments and doodads and everything so that there's an even surface to work on. Now, that's not going to be possible if you're doing mixed media in your planner like I do, because this is kind of lumpy from all of the other spreads I've done. So you can see there's some boxy pieces that make it kind of hard to be level. So one thing that I do to take care of that is you can use an Erin Condren cover, or you can use something hard like this, like a clipboard or something hard. The only thing about these that I've noticed is that when you stick them in to put underneath your stamping, sometimes it's just kind of bulky and it gets in the way. So if I'm looking to stamp up here, this might get in the way, or it might move a little bit like that. So I actually prefer using these covers because they kind of go in and they make it even for you to stamp on, and nothing's in your way while you're stamping. So I like to go ahead and put these in first, because I will tell you, I have taken some stamps, gotten all ready, gotten very excited, went to lay the stamp down, and it was just a mess because I forgot to put this in, and I've got so many things on the pages before. This side's not so bad because this is all new planner. So so that's what I use to keep it kind of level. So let's change to, I'm planning for next week. So we're going to go here. We're going to put our page, I don't know what you want to call it, basically just covers underneath each side. And now we're ready to stamp. Some of the things that you might want to go ahead and get ready with stamping is a water-based stamp cleaner. I like this. I've used it thousands of times and I've hardly used any at all. But this is by Ranger. It claims it's bubblegum scented, but it smells to me like citrus. So it's a water-based stamp cleaner. I like to I like to spray it directly on the stamps because it gets all that residue off. But sometimes I'll spray it on a paper towel and then just dab it on the stamps, depending on what I use. But I use a lot of blacks, so if I don't get the black off of the stamp, then I can't go back in and use a light pink later without having a little bit of black residue. So that's why I went ahead and got this. I've tried a million different things, and this just seems to work for me. Ranger is not the only one who makes water-based stamp cleaners, so you know, and I'm sure there's many other ways to do it, but this is just the way that I've found. I'm by no means an expert. This is just what I've found to work for me. So, so have that handy. I like to have an idea of my spread ahead of time, so I usually pick out some washi that works. I like these three together. I'm curious about how they might end up. I kind of just let my mind be a little free to figure out what to do when I'm stamping. As I stamp and put down washi and do things, I do it just a little bit at a time and just kind of soak it in and see how it feels to me and see if I'm trying to overdo it or maybe I've underdone it. So that's kind of how I work with my spreads. But this time we're going to use just a little bit of washi, and we'll probably use just all stamps. And then I also have my Tombow brush pens and micro lines. Don't let this stress you out. I just have them. I prefer to use just one of these or two of these. Sometimes I'll put highlights on my stamps and or my pieces that I put in there, my mixed media projects. So I'll use these a whole lot. I don't use the colors very often, but I like to have them. So these are just standing by in case I want to use them. We may use a little bit of Prismacolor today, but you can use anything. Regular colored pencils, anything. But I like Prismacolor because they kind of blend really well. And I prefer all the dark colors, and that kind of goes along with one of the stamp sets that we'll be using today. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. Forgive me for my nervousness. I'm just not certain how to do this. I've watched thousands of these, but I've never really done them myself. I've kind of done a flip through. I've done a haul, but I didn't speak, and I just kind of did it and filmed it on my phone and uploaded it to YouTube. But I want you to feel like you don't have to have everything to do all of this. This is not an expert thing to do. This is just something to keep things level. Something I figured out, a little tip and trick, and it's something that you don't have to go out and buy. That's what I like to do. I try to be as frugal as possible. Look for the best deal somewhere on something. Like my Prismacolors, that whole set, I believe I paid $15 for it on a special on Amazon. And the tin is dented, but nothing inside was disturbed. And now I have 72 very expensive Prismacolors to work with. So keep an eye out for those types of things, and just build your collection as you go along. I didn't have all of these things to begin with. I just used what I had, and that's okay too. I got washi from the dollar store. I used stamps I would get in the dollar bin, and those are a little bit different too. You kind of have to get those a little bit ready because they're not anywhere near the quality of some of the stamps that are out there, like Studio L2E, excuse me, and Sweet Stamp Shop. Some of the others, I use Atelier Dreams. That's another stamp shop that I use, and then I use Gorgeous Stamps. That's spelled Gorjuss. That's the type of girls that and the stamp maker, Santoro. They make these cute little girl stamps. They're just adorable, and I've used them in my spreads before. Let me see if I can find. I don't fill out the monthly parts of these. Let me see. I've used, like here, I used one in July. And I think my very first one in this particular planner I used. Let's see. Right here. I stamped her, and then I used a page from a 100-year-old dictionary and did a little bit of paper origami and created her little dress there, and then just did some ink work around it and some Prismacolors. But I adore her, and this is the one that I used right here. So she also comes with little corners, so you can make it like, a photograph, or you can just put corners on your spread. You can do anything with some of these little pieces. As you can tell, I use the butterflies here too. So yes, I struggle to not use her in every single spread because she's just amazing. But she comes in lots of different variations. You can get them small like this, where they're just the girl in some sort of scene. And then the larger stamp sets, which come with little pieces. And they come in these little boxes, and a lot of times have a character card. So, like this one, it's just adorable. I just love it. And I love the dark colors. I love the wistful longing, the look on the girl's face. I can just really relate to that. It just gives me warm fuzzies. So anyway, let me show you the one I got yesterday that I am in love with, that I think we're going to use for this spread. This one, it's called the White Rabbit, I believe. Yes, the White Rabbit. And again, it's a gorgeous girl stamp from Santoro, London. I love that it has this little bow. I've been dreaming about this little bow and what I'm going to do with it. I don't have any definites yet, but I wanted to kind of see it on my spread and see what's going to happen. I love that it has this little scene here, this little nature scene. You can use that. And they come like this. They're not clear acrylic blocks. They're just the regular rubber that usually come on a wood, but they come like this. Now, I use my acrylic blocks. This is an acrylic block, and I like how it has the little dividers on it so that you can kind of line up your stamp work in your planner. That's really helpful. So let's say I want to use this stamp. I would peel it off of here and stick it on my block, which I like to stick it on the lines so that it's easier to figure out. Okay, make sure it's on there good. And then you put it in your stamper, and then you can line it up however you want. Now, I prefer to do stamping standing up. If I do that, I've got even pressure going down. If I do it from how I'm seated right now, it's quite possible that I'm only going to put pressure on this side and not enough on this side. So when it comes up, part of it's not going to be there. Especially if I didn't get enough ink on it to begin with, or if I got too much ink on it, it's going to smear all over the place. So just a tip for later, because I may forget to tell you. If you prefer, try stamping standing up. It's actually a little bit easier. You can kind of stamp and have a bit more control of it going straight down in one easy fluid motion, and then just pressing it down just a little bit right from the middle. So I like to press in the middle and get kind of an even feel, and then up. Now with your acrylics, they're not as hard as these. They're very pliable. So if you do the stamping and then you probably only want to put your finger down in the middle, because if you push more on this end or this end on an acrylic that's very jelly-like, you're going to end up with an uneven stamp. So the best thing that you can do is stand up, do an even push. So use your block as your guide, you know, with the lines and with the pressure. Push down evenly, and then pick it back up. So you'll have an even stamp. Something else that I hear a lot about when people are stamping, they say, oh, it doesn't look clear or crisp, it doesn't, you know, doesn't come out the way, or I smeared it. Well, that comes down to the kind of ink that you used. I have two different kinds of ink, pigment ink and dye ink. Pigment ink is the kind of ink that I use when I'm in my planner most of the time, because the ink sits on top of the paper, it's clear and crisp, it looks great, but the drawback is that you need to let it dry for a minute because it will smear. So you might have the perfect stamp, but it will smear if you don't give it a moment. So you don't want to do all of your stamping all at once. Sometimes you'll do some regular stamping, let it dry a little bit, and then come back and do more. The other kind of ink is called dye ink. And this is an example of one of those, dye ink. It's fade resistant. When you stamp, it goes right into the paper. It soaks into the paper and kind of disperses. So it gives it kind of a blurred look. And I love the look. If that's the look you're going for, you want to use dye ink. So here's some examples of some of these Memento dye ink stamps. And see how it just, I don't know if you can tell, but it just kind of blurs a bit. Now here's the same thing in pigment ink. See how much clearer, how much more vibrant, more detailed that is, as opposed to, well, here's another example of the pigment. Let's see, this is the dye ink, so I'll put them together so you can see pigment and dye ink, the differences there. Can you see that? Okay. Ignore all the other things. I often take these out to look first. That's another good tip, is to take what inks you have, put them down, write what they are. Like this is from Color Box. So this is this one right here. It's a paint box from Color Box. It is pigment ink. It says it here on the box, pigment. And what I like about these is you can take them, side to side and just take them out. But at the bottom there's a little thing. You just pop it out and you use it on your ink pad, and then you just pop it back in. So it's pretty easy. It keeps it from drying out. So if you're using the one, you can cover it and keep all the rest. Something, and I wish I knew who to thank for this. I cannot remember who I saw it on. It was a YouTube video at some point, but oh, you know what? It's not. Michelle Baxter, I believe Michelle Baxter said this. Store your inks upside down. That way all of the, especially if it's starting to dry a little bit at the top, or it dried a little bit when you were using it, all the ink will kind of go down toward the top. And then when you put your ink in it, or I'm sorry, excuse me, when you dab it with your ink pad, it'll be more even and full of ink. So you won't be trying so hard to get ink on your stamps. So store them upside down. I don't think I showed you my regular black ink that I use. Oh, I just happen to have these. These are cute little woodland creatures from Studio L2E. And I love the weather stamps that she has too. Those are cute. You can put those in your planner too. Look at the woodland creatures. You could do an entire spread with just woodland creatures and do some sort of green washi at the bottom, or whatever. You could use it for fall. You could use it for like a night scene. You could use it for a fall scene. But I like using stamps no matter what time of the year. So like Studio L2E, my good friend Kainani, she's so sweet, has a Valentine's Day set of stamps, and I used those for a different spread, and it wasn't even a Valentine's Day spread. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I just loved it. It has all kinds of hearts in it, and so I stamped the hearts, and I believe I used Prismacolors to fill in the hearts. Here they are. Okay, so this is using Studio L2E's Valentine's Day hearts. So I think this came with the gorgeous girls. But this is part of her Valentine's Day. It just, isn't it adorable? It has the little bows and the little hearts. Let me see. This is also from her shop, the little bow checklist. And then these little, this is actually a stamp that's about this big, and I just stamped it over and over, but it's little hearts, so it kind of looks like washi. I loved it. So anyway, one of my favorites. Okay, back to, I tend to go on rabbit holes, so just work with me here. So back to the different kinds of ink. You have to start out with the right tools, or you won't get the result that you're looking for. I discovered that pretty quickly when I started stamping, that this is what I was hoping for, a nice clear stamp, and I bought the wrong ink and ended up with this, which is great if you're wanting to give kind of a vintage look to something, have it a little more abstract in the background, as opposed to something as crisp and clean that you want in the foreground. Oh, by the way, these are Recollections ombre stamps. They're great. I think they're cute. I cannot use them in my planner. Reason being, they bleed a lot. Now, I haven't tried them in the new Erin Condren paper, but I'm just not willing to give that a try. Look how they bleed, and I didn't even use a ton of ink. So the basic cheap Recollections stamp ink, you know, spend an extra $1 or $2 and get the good ink. Just something that's a name brand, Memento or Ranger or VersaFine. I use, this is the one I started out using. This is Ranger Pigment Ink Pad. So it tells you right there it's pigment, and it's just like this. You just open it up, and you can either apply your stamp this way, which is good because it helps you be able to see whether you have given a long enough, I'm sorry, excuse me. My throat's a little dry. Given enough ink to the stamp, as opposed to if you do this, then you don't know how much ink is getting on your stamp pad unless you flip it over and you take a good look. Meanwhile, your ink's drying, or you know, you're just not sure. And I think that's where I get a little nervous when I keep doing this, and I'm like, oh, did I get enough ink on it? So I prefer to lay down my stamp like that and make sure it's all even ahead of time. You know, see what I've got on there. So anyway, this is a Ranger ink. It's always worked well for me, but I have a new favorite in town, VersaFine. It also says pigment ink. So this is the kind that I use, the Onyx Black. It opens like this, and it doesn't have the pad that this one does. This one has kind of a pad, spongy pad, and this one has, it's almost like cloth on the top, so you get a more even application. So I've got some tulle in there from some of my stuff I was working on in the shop. I like to do some stamping right in the same area, do my planning. I do everything in the same area. My bills, my planning, my shop work. I need to really go through and do some reworking. But until then, I'm going to have bits of tulle and things in different places. But I don't know if you can see that, but it's not a spongy pad. It has like a cloth type top to it. It's just better quality, and it keeps you from soaking all kinds of ink in and having blobby ink when you press it down. You just get an even amount of ink, press it down, it's all good. As opposed to the sponge, which is a little trickier. So a sponge is going to, you know, distribute ink